Alright YouTube, so we are back of course to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and what we have today is something very, very interesting that's kind of been out there and talked about for a while that I just came across, and it is that when it comes to Remake, there are multiple Midgars. Now, we have already had the idea in theory for a while that there is possibly multiple timelines, right? I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory, but it's out there. We've talked about it quite a bit. There is definitively two different Midgars when it comes to Remake. So while I'm somebody that does mostly disagree with the multiple timeline theory, this is something that I just cannot dispute here. And what it is, even more so interesting than there just being multiple Midgars or multiple timelines or whatever, it's that one of the Midgars is obviously the Midgar we have in Remake, but the other Midgar we're going to look at is actually the Midgar from the original game. And the different Midgar we're talking about today is the one we see within the singularity at the end of the game whenever Cloud's floating in the sky looking down on Midgar. That is the original Midgar from the original game. And not only enough how we know this is a couple of minor details. Also, there's apparently a third possible Midgar or third possible timeline with the Zack stuff. People refer to it as Terrier or the Terrier timeline because of the Terrier dog that's on the back of chips. I don't know. I haven't really looked at that Midgar to see if it's any different, but apparently it might be. Anyways. So right here we have the super high quality image of Midgar that we looked at some time ago. I don't remember how long it's been. There's two things to pay attention to. Outside the walls of the upper plate, you can see that they are building outwards because of overpopulation. They are expanding. The other thing to pay attention to is on the inside of the reactors within Midgar, where the symbols, I believe they're called kanji or whatever they are, the symbols and the numbers, how they're painted, they're the exact same color. Behind the symbol is gray, behind the number is gray on all the insides of the reactors, okay? So if we hop on over here to an aerial shot of Midgar from the original game, you can see that they're also building outwards from the upper plate, but it's not quite the same. With Remake, the inside and outside the wall look kind of the same. With the OG, it looks like they're building outwards, but they haven't quite built onto that platform yet. But what's important to notice, and it's not the best quality when you zoom in, if you look at the symbol and the number on the inside of the reactors, there's clearly a black box or something, or dark box that the symbol's in. The number doesn't really have anything behind it. That's very important. And lastly, of course, we hop on over here to the Singularity Midgar, which is, of course, the Midgar the Cloud is floating above at the end of Remake. If you look on the outside of the upper plate's walls, you can see that they have expanded outwards, but they haven't really started building yet, which is a lot what the original game's Midgar looks like, as we just took a look at. But the obvious important detail here is the Maka reactors. If you look at it, you can see clearly that the symbols are inside these dark-colored black boxes or whatever they are, but the numbers below them are not, which is what the original game's Midgar looks like. Remakes does not have the black boxes. And just to further get the point across, here's a crudely put together side-by-side comparison. Remake in the background, of course, no black boxes. The Singularity, black boxes. Original game, black boxes. So, what does all of this mean? I have no goddamn idea. It's at least evidence that points towards there being multiple timelines. There's clearly, definitively, can't even argue it, multiple different Midgars within Remake. So that leans into the idea of there being multiple timelines. This also leans into the idea that we talked about before in the past, that has been talked about by actually Nomura and other developers and stuff, that Remake is more of a continuation of the FF7 compilation than just being them remaking, FF7 as a standalone game. It's actually a part of the overall Final Fantasy VII compilation, which is Before Crisis, Crisis Core, Dare Disturbers, Advent Children, Last Order, and the original game, of course. Remake is just a part of all of that, which, it's so more or less like a sequel, as we've talked about in the past. And I think us going into the Singularity at the end of Remake and floating above the original game's Midgar that doesn't exactly look like the Remake's Midgar could be a bit of evidence to support that this is some sort of follow-up. Why is the original game's Midgar within the Singularity? That's kind of weird. Again, if you do a side-by-side comparison, it is distinctly different from the way Midgar looks in Remake. They went out of their way to make the outsides of the walls of the upper plate not have buildings on it, and also, obviously, the black boxes that the symbols are inside of. Anyways, I thought this was a fantastic observation. It's such a minor detail that I honestly would have never noticed had it not been pointed out to me. Shout out to Inzavo, I think is how you say his name, over on Reddit. I don't know if they're the first one to ever find this. This Reddit post goes back 5 months. They're just the Reddit post I came across. And as long as we've been talking about Remake, for 8-9 months or whatever it's been now, I have never heard this. Nobody's ever brought this up to me in my comment section, at least that I've seen. Sometimes comments just get buried. Sometimes you don't get notifications. Sometimes comments just never pop up. It's weird. YouTube kind of sucks in that regard. But I've never heard this. So if this information is new to you like it is to me, I gotta ask the question, of course, what the hell do you think this means? Other dudes, that is the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. We'll stay updated with more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter at dashingdavidYT. I gotta still kind of get used to saying that. At my Discord, links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more. And nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine or leave it like Cobain.